Once you know the basics of structuring an HTML document, it's a whole lot easier to begin writing and editing your own HTML files. In this chapter, we're going to strip an HTML document down to its most basic parts, so we can just focus on just the essentials of what makes up an HTML file. So I have my browser Chrome open, and I've opened up from the Chapter 2 folder of our exercise files, 02_01 structure.htm. Now, this is pretty simple. As a matter of fact, this is about as simple as an HTML document can get. You can see on the page here, we just have a headline that says page content. And below that, we have a little bit of descriptive text that talks about the main page, content appearing inside the body tag, other elements that allow you to properly structure and format your content, things like that. But it's really hard when we look at a page in the browser visually to determine what the actual structure of the document is. Well, one of the nice things that most browsers give us are some tools to allow us to inspect these documents. So in Internet Explorer, for example, it has the developer tools. And in Firefox, we have Firebug. And in WebKit browsers and in Chrome, we have what's known as the WebKit Inspector. So they allow us to sort of get a window into how documents are structured. If I right-click this file and I choose Inspect Element, it opens up the WebKit Inspector, and this gives me access to the actual HTML itself. You can see I can begin to expand this. Now, I notice that we start with just an HTML tag. That's the topmost or root parent for my file. And then inside that, I have a head element that has some tags inside of it. And then below that, we have the body tag and some elements inside of that. And I can see by just sort of mousing around through these that these visual elements that I'm seeing are indeed inside the body tag. So as I mouse around, I get some information about them. It shows me what element I'm looking at. So these are really handy tools to allow you to go to a website, inspect that site, and take a look at the HTML code. So if you've ever wondered how things like CNN.com were put together or other large websites, you can browse to them, open up these developer tools, and really go through the HTML and see how people are building things. Now, we're interested in just the basic structure of the document. So I'm going to leave the browser, and I'm going to switch over to my code editor. And inside my code editor, which is brackets here, I've opened up the exact same file. And this is just going to give us a cleaner format for going through the structure of the HTML itself. Okay, now whenever I'm teaching people sort of basic HTML document structure, I always reference a sandwich. And that's because in a lot of ways you can compare an HTML document to a sandwich. To have a sandwich, first need 2 pieces of bread. Well, the same is true for HTML tags. I need an opening HTML tag and it needs a closing HTML tag. Without those, I don't have a sandwich. Without 2 pieces of bread, I don't have a sandwich, I have a salad. Without those, I don't have an HTML document. Now, at the very top, I have the doc type declaration. What this does is it tells user agents which version of HTML I'm going to be using. Below that, we have the actual HTML itself, which again starts and ends with the HTML tag. Now, inside that, we have 2 main regions. We have the head and we have the body. The head, if I go back to my sandwich, you can think about this as the condiments really, like mayonnaise, mustard, things like that, lettuce, tomatoes, the things that make your sandwich better but don't necessarily define it. So within the head of the document in HTML, you have all the things that go into making the document work. Here, for example, we have a meta tag that describes the UTF-8 encoding that should be used. We have some descriptive meta tags, which can help search engines and other robots. And we also have a title. Every page needs to have a title for accessibility reasons. And this is going to appear in the tab that you open up for this particular page. You could also put things in the head of the document like links to external resources, like CSS files that help style the page, JavaScript files that help control the behavior of the page. So these are non-visual elements that go into making the page work. Below that, we have the body, and you can think of the body region as sort of the meat of the sandwich. This is the roast beef, the provolone, all the things that make a sandwich what the sandwich is. Within the body tag, you're going to have all of the visual elements on the page. So in this case, a heading 1 and a paragraph. You could have your main content, your sidebars, your footers. All the visual content on the page are going to appear within this body tag. That is absolutely as complicated as HTML documents get. That's it. You're always going to have in an HTML document, you're always going to have the HTML tags. You should have a document type declaration at the very top, but you're always going to have your HTML tags. You're going to have the head region, where all of the invisible elements that make the page work are going to go. And below that, you're going to have the body region, which is where all your visible elements go. Now, you can certainly have a lot more in your document and a lot more going on, but the basic structure of your HTML page is going to be this. So now that we've gone over the overall structure of the page, we're going to use the rest of the chapter to focus on each area individually. We're going to start that in our next exercise when we discuss the document type declaration. The history of the doc type declaration is a really long and varied one. I'll give you a link to the details surrounding it a little bit later on, but for the most part, the doc type is just one of those things that not everybody understands exactly what it does. They just know that they need one. So what the doc type is supposed to do is tell the browser or user agent which version of HTML that you'll be using, so it knows which version of the syntax to use when parsing. Well, in reality, all it's really doing is triggering something called quirks mode, which ensures that your page is going to be rendered properly. I know this probably sounds confusing, so I just want you to remember this. You need to have a doc type declaration, and you want the doc type to reflect the version of HTML that you'll be writing. Now, we're looking at a pretty old document right now. This was put together in 2002 by the W3C. I don't believe any of this quality assurance section is being updated currently. But what this does for us is it gives us a little bit more of information about the doc type declaration. If you really want to read about it, this link right here takes you to a page that discusses a little bit more about what the doc type declaration does, why we need one, the history of it, that sort of thing. Now, if I scroll down a little bit, I can see a list of all of the different HTML and XHTML doc type declarations. We really don't have to use these anymore. But the reason I'm showing you these is because a lot of you guys are probably going to be editing documents that were created earlier or some legacy files, or you're going to open up an HTML file from another site to kind of learn from, and you're going to see this stuff up top, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, what is all this stuff? Well, there were different versions of HTML and XHTML. We've kind of gone over a little bit of that history. And you're going to see that HTML, for example, had 3 different flavors: strict, transitional, and frame set. XHTML had the same 3: strict, transitional, and frame set. So depending upon which version you were using, you would use a different doc type declaration. And you can see these had a lot of information in it. It was HTML. It pointed back to the document type declaration, that sort of thing. And if I scroll down, I can see that there's actually a lot of these. The only one that we need to concern ourselves with is this one right here, down toward the bottom, where it says HTML5, not a standard yet. Remember, this was 2002. They didn't know what was coming. It is a standard now. And this is all we need. It's very simple. It's very basic. It basically just says doc type HTML. It doesn't worry about versioning numbers. It doesn't worry about a document type declaration file to point back to. It just tells the user agent, hey, an HTML document is on the way. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to go to our code editor, and for the rest of this chapter, we're going to start building a simple HTML page. The very first thing that you're going to do whenever you create an HTML page is start with a document type declaration. So go into the 02_02 directory and open up doctype.htm. Here comes the really hard part. What you're going to do is you're going to open up a right angle bracket, then you're going to do an exclamation point, and then you're going to type in the word doc type. Now, sometimes you're going to see this capitalized in all caps. Sometimes it's going to be lowercase. It does not matter. And then after that, you're going to see HTML and then the right angle bracket. That's it. That's your document type declaration. A lot of people would copy and paste them in the past, but that's actually pretty easy to remember. But you want that to appear at the very top of each of your HTML documents. And if you're ever creating templates for yourselves or boilerplates, make sure that your boilerplate is going to have it. So that ought to be the very first thing that you do when creating a new HTML document. Now, if you want to use one of the older document types to indicate a specific version of HTML or XHTML, you can do that. You just go to that site that I showed you and copy and paste those. I do want to point out there's really no compelling reason to do it anymore. Pretty much every document that you create from this point forward can just use the standard, very easy HTML5 doc type. So that's what I recommend.